Welcome, friends, to a new video. If you're new to the channel, here we explore the historical, mysterious, and fascinating events that took place throughout the long war in Afghanistan. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. If there's a particular event from the war in Afghanistan that you'd like me to cover, feel free to leave it in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's episode. December 2001. The White Mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Here, in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, the most wanted man in history would slip through America's fingers. This is the story of Tora Bora, where victory turned to ashes, where certainty became doubt, and where the fate of nations hung in the balance of a single decision. The September 11th attacks changed everything. 3,000 lives lost, the Twin Towers reduced to rubble, the Pentagon breached, and one name echoed across the world: Osama bin Laden. Within weeks, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom. The Taliban regime crumbled faster than anyone predicted. By late November, al-Qaeda fighters were retreating, pushed back by American special forces and their Afghan allies, running toward the only sanctuary they knew: Tora Bora. The name means black dust in Pashto. A labyrinth of caves and tunnels carved into the Spingar Mountains, sitting at 14,000 feet above sea level. Soviet engineers had hollowed out these mountains in the 1980s, creating bunkers that could withstand direct hits from bombs. Osama bin Laden himself had expanded them during the Afghan-Soviet War, adding more tunnels, more chambers, more escape routes. This was his fortress, his final redoubt, and American intelligence knew he was there. CIA intercepts confirmed it: radio chatter, satellite phones. On December 3rd, a voice identified as bin Laden's was heard directing his fighters to hold the line. For the first time since the attacks, they had him pinpointed, cornered, trapped between the American forces closing in from the north and the supposedly sealed Pakistan border to the south. It should have been the end game. CIA officer Gary Burnson, leading the agency's team on the ground, sent urgent requests up the chain of command. Send in the Marines, block every pass, seal every exit. He needed 800 troops, maybe 1,000, to create an anvil against which his Afghan militia, the Hammer, would crush al-Qaeda. The answer came back: no. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld wanted a light footprint. General Tommy Franks was already planning for the next war, Iraq. The decision was made. Afghan militia forces, backed by American air power and a handful of special operations troops, would be enough. It was a fatal miscalculation. On December 5th, the assault began. AC-130 gunships circled overhead, their howitzers lighting up the mountain like thunder from Olympus. B-52 bombers dropped 2,000-pound bombs that shook the earth for miles. Daisy cutters, 15,000-pound fuel-air explosives, detonated with such force that they vaporized everything within a 1,000-yard radius. The bombardment was biblical, apocalyptic. The mountains themselves seemed to be screaming. And still, al-Qaeda fought back. From the caves came machine gun fire, rockets, mortars. Fighters emerged from tunnels like ghosts, attacked, and vanished back into the stone. The Afghan militias, brave but undisciplined, advanced by day and retreated by night. Many were simply looking for American dollars, not martyrdom. Some negotiated local ceasefires without consulting the Americans. Time was slipping away. December 9th. Deep in the cave complex, surrounded by his most loyal fighters, Osama bin Laden picked up a radio. For days, American and British signals intelligence had been tracking communications from Tora Bora. Now, they were hearing something extraordinary. What they believed was bin Laden himself speaking to his men. The voice was calm, defiant, apologetic. "Forgive me," it said in Arabic, according to those who heard the intercepts. The speaker apologized for the losses his followers had suffered, for leading them into this trap. He spoke of martyrdom, of paradise, of the righteousness of their cause. And then, silence. Was this a farewell address, a final testament before a last stand? On the ground, Gary Burnson was convinced they had him. The noose was tightening. More airstrikes were called in. The caves were being systematically destroyed, sealed, collapsed. Surely no one could escape this hell. But the Afghan commanders brought troubling news. The Pakistani border, less than 6 miles away as the crow flies, was porous. The mountain passes were known only to locals and smugglers. Despite assurances from Pakistan's military that they had sealed the border, there were gaps, huge gaps, entire valleys that no Pakistani troops covered. And it was winter, deep snow, limited visibility, perfect conditions for a handful of men to disappear. December 12th. The radio intercepts stopped. No more voices, no more commands. The caves fell eerily silent. When Afghan fighters finally pushed deep enough into the complex, they found abandoned positions, spent ammunition, and something else, a network of tunnels that led south, toward Pakistan. The realization hit like a gut punch. They were gone. Bin Laden, his deputy, Ayman al-Zawahiri, his military commanders, the core leadership of al-Qaeda vanished into the mountains like smoke. How many escaped? Intelligence estimates ranged wildly. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The exact number would never be known. But what was certain was this: the world's most wanted terrorist had been within grasp, and he had slipped away. Act 3. The Ghost Trail. In the days that followed, the evidence of the escape mounted. Pakistani journalists began reporting sightings in the tribal areas across the border. Local tribesmen spoke of wounded Arab fighters being treated in remote villages. ISI, Pakistan's intelligence service, remained suspiciously quiet, despite their promises of cooperation. The mountain passes told their own story: footprints in the snow, discarded supplies, blood trails. Small groups had moved south through the peaks, using routes that only mountain people knew, ancient smuggling paths that had existed for centuries. Some accounts suggest bin Laden traveled with a core group of bodyguards, moving at night, hiding by day. They might have used donkeys or gone on foot. They would have needed help from local Pashtun tribesmen, bound by the ancient code of Pashtunwali, the obligation to provide sanctuary to guests, even enemies of the state. Intelligence officials pieced together fragments of the puzzle: a satellite phone call here, an informant's tip there. But the trail went cold in the lawless regions of Waziristan, where Pakistan's government held little real power. The ghost had disappeared into a land of ghosts. Back at Tora Bora, American and Afghan forces combed through the ruins. The caves were vast, horrifying. Some chambers were large enough to drive trucks through. There were ventilation systems, sleeping quarters, weapons depots, medical facilities. One cave contained a hydroelectric generator. It was an underground fortress built to withstand a siege. And it had failed, not because it was destroyed, but because its defenders had chosen escape over martyrdom. The escape from Tora Bora became one of the most debated episodes of the War on Terror. Could it have been prevented? Absolutely. 800 American troops at the mountain passes would have changed everything. So would closing the Pakistan border with real force, not just promises. Why wasn't it done? The answers are complex, layered with military doctrine, political considerations, and the fog of war. The Pentagon wanted to avoid another Soviet-style quagmire in Afghanistan. They wanted Afghan faces on the victory, not American ones. They were confident that air power and local proxies would be enough. They were wrong. Gary Burnson would later write a book about his experiences, titled Jawbreaker. In it, he didn't mince words. The failure to commit U.S. troops at Tora Bora was a strategic blunder that allowed al-Qaeda's leadership to survive and regroup. Senator John Kerry, during the 2004 presidential campaign, called it one of the greatest military failures in American history. Others defended the decisions, arguing that the intelligence was never certain, that the risks were too high, that hindsight is always clearer than the chaos of real-time warfare. But the facts remained. Bin Laden escaped, al-Qaeda survived, and the war that was supposed to end in those mountains would drag on for 2 decades. Osama bin Laden would remain free for nearly another 10 years. From hiding, he released videotapes. He planned operations. He became a symbol, a ghost haunting the American psyche, proof that even the world's greatest superpower could be defied. The escape from Tora Bora had consequences that rippled across the world. It emboldened al-Qaeda. It complicated the war in Afghanistan. It raised questions about Pakistan's true allegiance. And it meant that thousands more American soldiers, Afghan civilians, and others around the world would die in a conflict that might have ended in December 2001. May 2, 2011, Abbottabad, Pakistan. Navy SEALs stormed a compound and finally ended the hunt. Bin Laden was dead, shot in a midnight raid half a world away from those mountains where he'd once commanded an army. But the questions lingered. What if? What if those passes had been sealed? What if American troops had been sent in? What if the ghost of Tora Bora had been captured that winter? History doesn't deal in what-ifs, but it does demand we learn from what was. Today, the Tora Bora caves remain. Wind howls through the tunnels. Snow covers the blackened rock where bombs once fell. The fortress is empty now, abandoned, a monument to a moment when the course of history pivoted on decisions made in the heat of war. The escape from Tora Bora teaches us that no technology, no air power, no intelligence apparatus can substitute for the will to commit fully to a mission. It teaches us that wars are won on the ground, by soldiers holding territory, not just by missiles falling from the sky. And it reminds us that sometimes the enemy you underestimate is the one who haunts you longest. Osama bin Laden was killed by U.S. forces on May 2, 2011 in Abbottabad, Pakistan, nearly 10 years after his escape from Tora Bora. The war in Afghanistan would become America's longest war, ending in August 2021. The exact details of bin Laden's escape remain classified and disputed. The caves of Tora Bora stand empty, a silent witness to one of history's greatest manhunts. That's it for today's video, my friends. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.